I think it's chapter 84, and it's dealing with different things what are the different things we're allowed to carry, possibly, or not carry in the public domain on the Shabbos. So, hold on, let's bring up the text. Okay, like this. Some of them are obvious, some of them are less obvious. Hold on, let's make sure everything's there. Okay. So here, again, we have to take everything we have to remember there's two rules. One rule is it has to be something that you wear, you're not carrying it, even on your body, and something that if it's not like a clothing, it's not a lavush, it could be a tachshit, it could be an ornament, but if it's neither, then you can't just put tons of things on your person and say, well, it's on my body and I'm carrying it, and I'm taking it. Then it's just a form of carrying. That's the fundamental point of this parak, of this chapter. So the Rebbe said like this: Asr li isha lesas beged al tzeifa. Okay, so a woman has, let's say, a kerchief over her hair, so she not put a garment over her kerchief. Or ish al hakoiveshloi. You can't put something on top of your hat to protect you from the rain. So let's say you don't want your kerchief or your hat to get wet, although the whole point of a hat is that the hat is protecting you from the wet, from the rain. But if you don't want your hat to get wet, so although we're going to put a lot of questions because we know that there's anyone who's going the streets of Bar Park or maybe Flatbush where Aaron lives, you'll see a lot of Hasidim will have these kind of rubber, plastic things that go over their strimals or their hats. So but to put something over your kerchief or your hat because of the rain is not allowed. That's extra. That's carrying. It's not a normal way of dressing, and it's not the usual way. If the reason you're doing it is not just you're carrying something on top of your hat or your kerchief, but it bothers you, it annoys you. If there's a feeling of annoyance going on, then you're allowed to. Now, the question is what you're not allowed to, because it doesn't say you can't just wear plastic over something covering over your hat or your kerchief, just stop in the middle of the day. It's because of the rain. So obviously, the reason you put it on in the first place is because of the rain. So what's the difference between yitzaru oiseg shamim? So it seems that if it's just something you'd rather not do, if it actually kind of makes you uncomfortable. Let's see the footnotes. Aaron, you have a question? You have to wait a second. Hold on.
Oh, no problem.
Some poskim permit wearing a plastic rain hat over a hat if it won't fall off. Okay. So this is the question that I mentioned, right? That we have, if you go in the streets of Bar Park, again, you have to remember something. The fedora hat, although it's a dress hat, one of the reasons the person puts a hat on is that the hat should protect you from the rain. But let's just put that on the side. Some poskim permit that wearing a plastic rain hat over a hat, if it won't fall off, it's allowed because it's sealed on. So then it's less than carrying. So seemingly from the poskim, the problem is not that it's not a way. See, he says if it's ein derech malbush, it's not the way you undress is. It shouldn't make a difference if it's fastened or not. Fastened only protects that you don't take it off. Okay, but he quotes the Har Tzvi, the base Shlomo, the Reb Eliyahu Meir Bloch, and the Chelkas Yaakov as allowing this. This is only so provided that people do not normally remove it if the rain stops. So here, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, which is the big authority of the past generation or the beginning of our generation, with the main posik of Eretz Yisrael, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and says that if it has to be on in such a way that a person, once it stops raining, you could be in places like in Seattle, that's unlikely to happen. That's going to stop raining. Even if it stops raining, it's still overcast. But you have places like Miami where it could just turn a storm and then all of a sudden it's gone and the clouds are out and it's beautiful, sunny. And if you're walking for 50 minutes, all of a sudden you're not comfortable wearing the plastic over your hat because it makes no sense, right? If it wasn't Shabbos, you would take it off right away. So it has to be in such a way you won't take it off. So says Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. The Igros Moshe, again, Moshe Feinstein, Harav Moshe Feinstein, only permits wearing a cover that warms. He doesn't agree to put a plastic on. because like the simple language of the halacha, it's not a regular thing to do. So if it's for warmth, so then it adds to the situation. But just to protect the quality of the cat or the kerchief, he doesn't allow. So we have different opinions. Again, if one goes to the streets of Bar Park or Golders Green or Stamford Hill, anywhere in the Frum community, where even before the days of an Erev, if I'm not mistaken, you'll see that there's special fitted plastics that go over the hats, and maybe that they're saimach on the poiskim, the people that are lenient and permit. Yes, yes, Aaron.
Okay. So what's the difference between a hat and a hood? A hood is attached to your jacket.
Yeah, no, a hood is part of the garment.
So you're saying is because we have as you mentioned, the Jewish from areas, they have these hats, they have these hoods on these rain jackets
Okay,
that
that's
cover
not
the
that.
st
Yeah, that's in the last 10 years that they what
No,
they
but
did.
but my question is you mentioned hats. Hoods don't come under hats, even though they cover the same way?
No, no, no. So hood wouldn't be a problem because the hood is connected to the coat.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be different. But it's a good question. It depends if the I guess it may depend if the hood is snap-on or not.
No,
If you
they have them that is totally attached.
heard that. Here he says the Magen Avram says that if it's mitzar, I want to see the English word he uses for tsar. Annoyed. Annoyed is a very light word for tsar. Tsar means if you're pained. Annoyed could be argued if that's pain. The only reason you put it on for the rain in the first place is because you're annoyed, right? So I mean, what's the difference between putting it in the first part of the law and the second part? But he puts the word yitzaru to annoyed in English. I'm not sure. Annoyed is a very light translation of yitzar. Yitzar would be more if it's the actual literal translation is if you're pained. Okay, but I think in other things in halacha and sukkah as well, they use the word tsar. They kind of apply it lightly to annoyance. Like if you're annoyed to sit in the sukkah, like we spoke yesterday in the shmuz. All right, the Magen Avram, the poskim permit wearing rubbers for the same reason. But again, I don't know if today it's still common. When I was growing up, that was very common. That you had nice dress shoes and growing up in Seattle, there was a must. Today, people are comfortable wearing rain boots. Then it wasn't really the custom. People didn't wear rain boots. So you put galoshes, which are the rubbers that you put on top of your shoes that are fitted to your shoes to the side, and they kind of somewhat, at least, 90% protect the quality of your shoes. So based on that, if it's tsar, even if they don't permit plastic hats covers, so he says galoshes they're more lenient than to put on rubbers on the shoes than to put on the hat. And it makes sense because the concern of taking off rubbers on the shoes that you've been walking with are less likely because it's dirty, it's muddy. So you're just going to leave it on until you get to your final destination. Whereas putting on a rain hat, if you're standing in the street, and also galoshes that everyone sees, and it's kind of nicer. Today, I don't know, they made them even fancy that they have a certain, design, so it doesn't look so awkward. But either way, this is an interesting law. The bottom line is seemingly that we could I mean, Moshe Feinstein is not really Harav Moshe Feinstein is not really lenient, but one could wear a rain hat and rubbers on the shoes. Now he also mentions the women, like it's a regular thing for a woman to have like a plastic rain hat that ties around the neck to protect even a shawl. So he's saying that would only be if there's annoyance. Again, what's the difference in annoyance and putting it on for the rain in the first place is not so clear. Okay. Now, yes, Barbara, you wanted to ask something.
Yeah, and I don't mean to go back to last week, but I had a question because I got to thinking we were talking about carrying house keys
Yeah.
and stuff. And if you had, I've seen these little bags, they were popular back in the 70s, where they had little velvet bags and they were embroidered and you could wear them around your neck. And if would that be allowed to
No,
put a
because
key in?
no, a bag is you're not allowed to wear a purse on Shabbos, carrying a purse.
Okay,
We'll
that
get
would
to
be considered carrying a purse. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so
why I
yeah,
wanted to be sure.
yeah.
Okay.
Now, the only thing is, it's not a clothing, it's not an ornament. The only thing is again, what they do is, and I think they do it for women as well, is that you could fasten it into your belt. I mean, Rabbi Goldschmidt is definitely familiar. I don't know if there's the way to do it in Seattle because you have to kind of drill a hole in the key, but there's a way to, if you have your regular metal key, you could hook like a rubber band, like an elastic rubber band that's not gonna hurt your stomach or something like that you could put
Okay.
around your waist that connects to your key. That's what we did.
Okay.
That's what we used to do in New York. So you carry it on the belt. That is allowed. Okay. Now there's a lot of things. Okay, we're going to go through a lot of things that maybe one assumes you can take out and you can't. Hachigar, a person who's lame, a chayla, or someone who is sick. She'amad michalye, who's now slowly getting better. V'chein zaken muflik. What about a really old person? Muflik means extremely old, very. Is she'i efshel leilech b'lei makel. If they can't walk without a walking stick at all, then they can walk with a walking stick. That's literally part of how they walk. Excuse me. If they can walk without the stick, and they don't use the stick at home, only in the outside, meaning to say it's not crucial. He gives it as support, but it's not like you cannot go without it. Also, it's not allowed. There's in Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, so there's discount shopping. So in discount shopping, you have like in anywhere, but the discount shopping when it comes to Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov, so the lines are outrageous. You could wait 2 hours online. Like really, if you go to the big shopping places like Rami Levy, if you want discount, you just they're not the service is excuse me. Service is not, they're getting you in because of the discount, not because of the service. So they'll have, 2 lines for hundreds of people. And we have an opportunity sometimes, unfortunately, for our situation, that we could use a what's called an exemption of waiting online, because if we have a special needs child and I was running to get my daughter and I was scared that I'd get stuck in line, so I used it. Even though she wasn't there, to try to get the line faster so I could go pick her up. And so another guy comes in and cuts in front of me, and he says he also has a P'tor Mitor. And I mean, although I was also, but he says he doesn't have to wait in any line, and he's going straight to the top, and he won't let anyone in because he has an exemption, because he has this card that for handicap, and he had a crutch with him. So he was a little aggressive, but I wouldn't let him through. Later, when I came out to the parking lot, he was unloading. He wasn't using his crutch. He was going back and forth, unloading his car, putting the trolley back in. Wasn't limping at all. So the crutch wasn't exactly crucial. So he used the crutch to kind of get sympathy. So similar over here, he says a little bit. Not that you're getting sympathy, but it's not necessary. You walk around the house without it. So, but hold on, Aaron. V'chein asuma. This is a difficult one. If a person is blind and has a blind man's stick. So to go out with a cane. A blind person cannot walk out with a cane for a blind person if there's no erev in the city. And if a person doesn't need a stick at all, I mean, it's not necessary. You should not walk out with a stick, even if there is an erev. It shows a disrespect for Shabbos. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, now I was going to bring up the blind person. When we were in college, we knew this guy. His eyes were removed, so he has 2 fake eyes, so he can't see anything.
Okay.
And
meaning to say he's 100% blind.
Yeah, he doesn't have real eyes anymore. So the point was, and he's Jewish and he kept Shabbos. So he said he has a seeing eye dog. He says on Shabbos, I have to give my seeing eye dog a day off because it's Shabbos. So in place of the seeing eye dog, I have to take out my stick because I can't see. And there's no way I'm getting around, and I can't have someone with me for the whole 24 hours of Shabbos taking me around. So how am I'm gonna bump into this stuff?
Let's see a second about the blind. Let's see the footnote on it before I will give an answer. I don't feel comfortable until I see other opinions. Okay, he says about walking on a stick, if you don't need the stick 100%, like in your house you don't use it, or like this person was, dancing around the parking lot without his cane, without his crutch, is a deraisa. If it's an outside public domain, it's biblical. For it is forbidden since it's not absolutely necessary for walking. So says the Bir Halacha, the Or Zeru, and Rabbeinu Yeruchim. Now about Aaron's question about the blind person not being able to use his cane. So what do we do? So he quotes, some say that this is only if the blind man knows his way. Okay, there you go. That's your case. But if he needs his cane in order not to trip on stumbling blocks, etc., he is likened to a lame and may use his cane. So he says the Meiri and the Machz and the Meseches Beitza. So that's the basis for the person going out with his cane is that he obviously didn't see anything, and he would stumble. So therefore, it's permitted to use the cane. Does that answer your question, Aaron?
I guess so. The whole idea, I'm just going to reiterate this again, is that he uses his seeing eye dog every single day of the week, but on Shabbos he gives the dog a day off because it's Shabbos, and so then he goes to the manual stick, which isn't as good.
I hear what you ask. I hear what you're asking. You're saying basically that he's creating a scenario. Again, I have to check about walking a dog. I don't think there's a problem walking a dog.
No, but he wants to give the dog a day off. It's
no, I know. I'm saying if walking the dog, a blind dog and holding the leash and being dependent on the dog is that much different than using the cane. I would assume it is, but at the same time, and I hear your question. You're saying basically that he's creating the necessity for the cane by not using his dog. He could give his dog a day off on Friday or Sunday. The reason he doesn't want to give up on Friday and Sunday is because he's more active on those days. So therefore, Shabbos anyways he's less active, I'm assuming. So therefore, it's a good opportunity to give the dog a day off. But I'm sure he should ask a rabbi about that. That's a good question. A person who needs no cane at all and wants to walk with a stick, like a person that has a stick as in a way of respect or what have you. So it's prestige. So then it's embarrassment to Shabbos to walk a stick, even in the Erev, he says. If it's needed as a symbol of prestige, a highly respected person may carry it within the confines of the Erev. Okay. The Magen Avraham disagrees, and he says that if it's mamish and a statement of who you are, so you could be lenient and he could carry it on if there's an Erev. Okay. It's uvda dechol. The reason why it's disrespectful to Shabbos is because it's very weekday-like. If you're not a prestige person, meaning a weekday activity. Such activity is prohibited rabbinically. See the Radvaz, Tiferes Yisrael, also the Nod of Yehuda responds at 28. Okay. Not sure exactly what this means, if this means handcuffs, or they had also times that people would wear shackles for other reasons. But either way, Mishu Asir B'Shal a person who is shackled in chains. Asir means locked, so you don't have the opportunity to unlock yourself. Mutter Latzes Behen, you could go out with them on Shabbos. And he quotes in number 18, Mordechai Shulchan Aruch, because it is his way of walking, and the chains on him is like a garment, and there is no fear that they will fall off. So says the Mishnah Berurah. I'm not sure. There's the case by the women. There used to be an idea that for modesty or for preserving virginity, whatever, the girls in the Talmudic times, the Mishnah times, would wear chains similar to it. So some places in Asia have other similar common kind of ideas. They would wear chains on the girls' feet, so they shouldn't make large steps. So that's the question, if you could wear those chains. Here it seems like he's talking about shackles like an imprisonment. I mean, the question would come today, if unfortunately, hey Rebecca, if unfortunately a person is wearing what do they call them? The belts that strap around your wrist your ankle, in case you have home arrest. Maybe if it's also extended to certain space outside your house, let's say you could walk a few miles around your house. If there's no Erev, if you could wear one of those on Shabbos. I'm assuming that that's what it would be similar to. Okay. He continues. He says like this. If you lived in places, swampy areas like in the Indonesia or in other places where people walk in the wetlands on stilts, that's how they walk around, because it's wetlands, so they walk around on stilts. He says you may not walk on stilts on Shabbos. That people use to walk through mud water. Again, so let's say, if you ever seen the pictures in Asia where there's the big rice fields and people walking on stilts, if you were doing that on Shabbos, it'd be forbidden. He quotes the Shulchan Aruch 30120. Okay. Again, we're tackling all kind of questions. Some of them may be a little uncomfortable in a second, but we're all adults. So here like this. Yoitzim b'ritiya sha'alamaka. A person, what about a plaster? You have a band-aid or something, or even a cast. Yoitzim b'ritiya sha'alamaka. You could wear the plaster on a wound. You can't plaster yourself on Shabbos. That we will tackle in chapter number 91, law 10. Because it's healing the person. Then it's considered like an ornament. You could use a plaster. A matlis is really, what do they say in English? A cloth, but it's also, what do they call it? They call them, you put around and you have a sprain. Barbie, you in what do you put?
Ace wrap.
Ace wrap. So if it's, thank you, if it's one of those, it's not it's totally nullified to the healing process. It's not something fancy. So it's chashuv. It's a betela gaberitiya. It's totally insignificant to the plaster. If you're going to use hold on, Aaron. If you're going to use something that's special, like a special, if I'm wearing something around my wound, I want to use a nice scarf. Like a scarf that doesn't now become nullified, it becomes its own garment, and it's not really a real garment because you wouldn't wear it if not for the wound. We're going to learn you can't just wrap things around yourself unless it's a way of wearing it. So here, to wrap a fancy thing that kind of changes, kind of gives a style to your Band-Aid, that's not allowed. But to have an ace wrap, which is just totally just to help the Band-Aid stay on, that's something different. Because the fancy scarf doesn't get nullified to the Band-Aid and to the plaster. The gam loy have a derech mablish, and you would never wear it that way. It's not like some people, let's say, I think there's a style. Some women will wear like a scarf around some sort of handkerchief around their wrist. So that's something else, and that has to be questioned. I'm not saying you can't, and therefore, if having ma'aseh, then you're carrying. Again, if it's not carried, it's not an ornament. You're just putting it on. The only reason you're trying to lessen the bad look of a plaster, so you can't say, well, I don't want to use an ace wrap that looks ugly. I want to use a nice scarf. That you're not allowed to do in Shabbos. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, you mentioned that plaster. You could wear it if it's on you. You can't put it on during Shabbos. Yeah. So in the morning, you walk into shul and you trip or whatever, you fall and you break your leg. And Hazalah picks you up in a nice kosher way, get you to the hospital, and they say the only way you can get off this bed is to put a plaster cast on. And it's Shabbos.
So let's wait till we get, we have to wait a little bit. And I'll post it on the chat. But let's wait till we get to chapter 91 where he addresses that question.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That's the medical question. What medical things you're allowed to do in Shabbos?
Oh, okay.
He quotes that it's the reason a plaster is allowed if it's provided is put on before Shabbos is because it's a remedy. Quotes the Torah, Shulchan Aruch. These are all again authorities on the law. But many achronim, which means later poskim, rule like the Rambam and Vilna Gaon, that even if it's just protecting the wound, may go out with it, according to Mishnah. So this is different. So if it means, he says, because it's healing, it's an ornament. It's an ornament, but it's a remedy. So it means it's healing it. But what happens if it's just protecting it? Right? You don't want it to get an infection. You don't want it to get dirty. So seemingly from the actual Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which he quotes the Torah in Shulchan Aruch, then you're not allowed it because it's only if it's healing. But the later opinions quote the Rambam and the Vilna Gaon that says even to protect the wound is allowed, and so says the Mishnah Berurah, or he quotes them at least. All right, footnote number 22. Only if it's a plaster, if it's a wrap that becomes insignificant to the plaster. The Nesiv Chaim, again another halachic authority, says that if it's needed to keep the plaster from falling off, you may go out with it. He's lenient, even if it's a nice thing, but it's not just covering it literally holds the Band-Aid on. So even if it's nice and you wouldn't be wearing it regularly, but it's actually doing something as opposed to just supporting something, it's actually keeping the Band-Aid on. So he's more lenient. It's therefore considered a burden, which means carrying. You are permitted to go out even with an article of value like a scarf if it protects the wound and is placed directly on the wound. So he quotes again the Mishnah Brura the Vilna Gaon, and the Rambam says that you could go out, hold on, Aaron, you could go out with a scarf if it itself becomes the plaster. But here we're talking about the ace wrap that's protecting the plaster. So then if you're just trying to kind of decorate it and stiff it, but if it's actually supporting the if it's protecting the wound or if it's supporting the plaster, so then it's different. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, so yeah, I know. I put it on mute. Okay, so a little personal, so the details so that you can understand. I have diabetes. I wear one of those constant monitoring items, and you put it on and it leaves on for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Some people, not me, but this brought up my curiosity. Some people put a sticker on it like a Band-Aid to hold it in place because for some reason they feel more secure with it, or it actually helps you keep it on. For some people, I don't have this problem falling off, but people do wear it with a sticker on top. Some of the stickers make it more pretty. Some stickers are boring, as just looks like a Band-Aid. It depends. A lot of kids.
I don't think that would be a problem because that qualifies in all the conditions that we put out, and it's not really a fancy scarf. It's just kind of this. It's like kids have they have children band-aids that have the Mickey Mouse on it. That's not. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about if let's say you're going out to an event and you have a plaster and you don't feel comfortable, so you put on like a fancy scarf over it to kind of as a style to kind of lessen the effect. That's what he's referring to, not referring to a sticker that's helping hold it that also happens to have a heart on it or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now he's like this. If a person has a discharge from the ear, like an earache or something, so you can place, he goes, moich is the cotton placed in your ear to absorb the discharge. That it won't fall out. So you have to really put in the cotton wool secured, safe in your ear. Also here, talking about totally different, but it's an insert in your shoe or your sandal. If it can't fall out, then you could walk with, even though it's an insert, it's not part of the shoe. But it's if it's secure like that, it's okay. Now we're going to go to the question that's a little bit off color, but either way. A menstrual pad. So the halacha says initially you can walk out with it on Shabbos. If it's only there to keep her clothing clean. Or to have, maybe those days they had kind of an apron for that. Unless it's literally a clothing, but just an actual pad that's separate, it's not allowed. But if it's very uncomfortable to let it just bleed and not be absorbed, and it's in a if it comes on your skin and it dries out, it's going to be painful and uncomfortable. Then you can walk out with the menstrual pad. So there's no footnotes on that. It's self-understood, which would be the basis of why you can walk out with one of those on Shabbos. Yes.
What about the ones you use for family purity that they make you use?
It's a good question. I have to remind myself on that one. It's a very good question. Let me check into that. Let me see if that's what it says over here. It says a woman who is in the state of nida wears a tampon or a stationary pad. So he says discussions during the days of a woman's monthly cycle when she is bleeding, and notice we all possibly agree that it's permitted for her to wear the pad or a tampon, since otherwise the blood will drip on splatter, causing physical discomfort, which is what we said. Oh, this is your question, Aaron. So if you already have it, might as well talk about it here. The poskim debate whether it's permitted for a woman to walk out of her home with the mochdoka. That's what you were talking about, which a woman inserts during being but I can't understand the word, after their hefsek tara. So in the process of purifying herself from her menstrual cycle, so in the process of purifying herself, she has the cloth inside. Some poskim strictly forbid it. Others recommend against it, and still others are more lenient. Okay, so you're not really getting an answer to your question, but at least it's addressed.
So I guess what I'm going to just put it like this: ask your Rav.
What he says you should do. He doesn't say, he kind of gives it a spectrum. All right. B'makim refesh v'tit. Here's another problem. This is interesting if I understand correctly the issue. Can you pull up your pants if you're walking through puddles? Right? Let's go back. There's a halacha that says that when you could there's a question of how many leniencies could you use in a situation. For instance, on sukkah, right? So we learned this. I think we learned it somewhere or the other. We learned the laws of love. I'm trying to remember where we learned it, but either way, that anything between, I think on Shabbos we learned. Yeah, we came to Erev, that anything that's within 3 tefachim, 3 fists, which is about 9 inches, let's say 10 inches, it's like closed space, it closed up. So if you would that's why if you see sukkahs today, so the people that want to be machmir, so even if they have the plastic sukkah, means the material around, because the plastic is just blowing in the wind, it's not really kind of according to some people, it's not good enough as a wall of a sukkah. So what do they have? They have the straps that go from 10 tefachim down, that kind of strap the around the poles and kind of lock up that space. And so then in theory, one would think that you don't really need the plastic around it. It's just for protection, privacy, etc. The weather. But it's not so simple. My Rabbi Deitch told me that but how do you connect the straps to the schach? Because in theory, the schach has to be sitting on the walls. So there's another rule. The rule is good asik mechitzas. That once you have a mechitza, if you were to have a fence or a wall that's 10 tefachim high, the law looks at it as if they go up to the sky. So, and if it has to hit the schach, it hits the schach, even though there could be 5 feet in between the end of the wall and the schach, because the schach has to sit on the walls. But once you have proper walls up to 10 tefachim, then it's as if what's called good asik mechitzas, the walls jump up, in theory. But the question is here: the walls themselves are based on an idea. You don't have walls; you only have strings every three tefachim. And the halacha says that we close that space up as if it's a wall. But could you use two ideas together? That first it has to become a wall, and then the wall goes up to the schach. The same thing over here. You wear galoshes, you're wearing rubbers on your shoes. You're allowed to do that because you have a discomfort. But now the reason you're wearing rubber, so therefore you're walking in the rain, and but you don't want to get your pants wet. You wouldn't be maybe walking in the puddles because you would if you didn't have protective gear on your shoes. But the only reason you have protective gear is on your shoes. So now you want to know, could I pull my pants up so my pants don't get wet? So he says, refesh v'tit. If you're walking in a place of mud and clay, you could pick up a bit your clothing, that you shouldn't get dirty in the mud. But to totally rise them is not allowed. Why? Because then you're carrying your pants, you're carrying your skirt. If you put up your skirt a little bit, so it's so you have to be careful. And I will never forget. My son was in London. London's like Seattle; it rains a lot and muddy in the parks. And it was the Shabbos of his bar mitzvah, and he went out to take my daughter on a walk, and he came back. His suit was all muddy. He was very disappointed. So it happens. So could you pull up your pants so it shouldn't get dirty, soiled from the mud? So he says, how much is forbidden? Enough to make a fold. So says the Maharil and the Mishnah Brura. Okay. Let's continue a little bit. Any questions, please jump in. There's another, here's a simple question. Can I wear 2 sweaters on Shabbos? Can I wear 2 coats, 2 jackets, 2 shirts, right? 2 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of socks, right? I remember the first time I went to a Seahawk game, a football game. My brother tells me, he goes, Mendy, you don't think it's cold until you're there. You don't realize how cold it is. He goes, you have to wear 5 pairs of socks and 4 pairs of pants, and Because in the winter, when you're standing still and on the metal bleachers, it gets very cold. So how many pairs of clothing could you wear? And the question is, why are you doubling up? So you're allowed to wear two clothing one on top of the next, and here he adds the af alga the af al pish any tzarich la'atzme ela as malbish hasheni ela shemoitzi l'tzarich haver v'kedem. Let's say you don't really need the second pair of socks or shirt or pants. Hold on, Aaron. You're only wearing it because you want to take it because your brother or someone needs another pair of pants. So you're gonna put on two pairs of pants, walk to your brother's house, so you can wear a pair of pants. You're not even wearing it for yourself. Are you allowed to do it on Shabbos? Says you're allowed to. He says, but that's only if at some point, normally in the week, you would do that. Just now, you don't need to do that, or you don't want to do that, and the only reason you're doing it is to take the pair of pants to someone else. But because it's a normal thing to wear two pairs of socks, it's not a crazy concept. It's a normal thing to sometimes put, a pair of jogging pants under your pants, right? So then you're allowed to, even if that right now you're not doing it. Why? To have a derech malbush, it's a normal way of dressing. To double up clothing. Even if usually you don't. Right means even though most of the time you don't, but because sometimes you do, we'll consider that dressing. But if there's certain clothing that you will never wear two, for instance, a suit jacket. No one walks outside with two suit jackets. You could wear two sweaters, that's normal. People are really cold. Two pairs of socks, two pairs of pants is normal. But a man to wear two suit jackets or a woman to wear two blazers is, in my opinion at least, is unheard of. So then it's actually wearing two pairs of clothing. Also, lots of Shabbos Mishum Dasheni have a kamasi because the second one you're carrying. Garvoyim, so the same law applies to two pairs of socks if you don't wear two pairs of socks. But today, a lot of people wear two pairs of socks just on a regular day. So too, some people, for instance, could you wear a hat over your kippah, over your yarmulke? But we do that during the week, so that's the regular way of walking out. Similar situations. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm just going to give you a bunch of items and just tell me after I give them to you what the ruling is. Okay. A suit jacket is one jacket. Then you put two warmer jackets over it is a suit jacket. A jacket at that point, a suit jacket over a vest, which a lot of Hasidic men wear, is the vest considered a jacket? And liners that you zip in and out that on warmer days you could unzip it and take it out of your jacket. Is that considered too if you wear another jacket under that with the liner?
Seemingly all your questions are permissible because every single one you have a reason for it. It's like a normal. It's sometimes you do it. Like there's someone to wear a warm jacket over your suit jacket. It's regular. A vest is part of the suit. That's part of their clothing. But people will not wear. It's very uncommon to literally wear. Like I'm talking about dress jackets. I'm not talking about warm jackets. They put on a suit jacket and another suit jacket on top. I've never seen someone walk around like that. It means it's because suit jackets are not for protection, unless it can happen very rarely if you have no choice and you're freezing. So you don't care, you do whatever you want. I'm saying it's not a normal thing at all. You'll never regularly do that in the week, put on two suit jackets, at least as far as unless I'm making a mistake.
I've never seen it.
I've never seen it, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. What about belting? We have another question. How many belts could you wear? Can you wear, it's a style to have you have belts on your pants. And you can have a belt around your, women will sometimes wear a belt around their suit or a belt around your rain jacket. Now, how many belts could you wear on Shabbos? So he says, I think, Rebecca, you're coming in twice. So it says like this. Ushtei chaguras, say Rebecca again. Ushtei chaguras, zu agabezu. If you want to wear two belts, one on top of the next. If that's a style that people do to wear one belt top of the next. Let's say let's say you have a belt that's actually functional, but it's not so pretty. So they put on top of it kind of a sleeve belt that makes it look nicer, but it doesn't really fasten whatever you're trying to fasten. It just make it, it's not nice to wear an ugly belt. So if the custom was to have a nice belt on top of an ugly belt, so that's part of the dress. And it's regular to wear on Shabbos as well. Even though now you're doing it for another reason. You're not wearing it because, but if it's the style that's regular, usually that people should have a nicer belt over a less nice belt, a functional belt over a design belt over a functional belt. So even if right now you're not doing it, you have other reasons, it's allowed because it's a regular way of dressing. He says, even though now you only need one. And the only reason you're taking out the second one is because you want to bring your friend a belt. But if it's not normal to wear two belts, and even if you're doing it for yourself, here is the chiddush. Aser, why? The kivin sheish dai bach is because you have one and one is functional. Some people have, this would be the question. So can you wear suspenders and a belt together? Some people like to do that. They like, the functionality of both of them. And so the question, I'm not sure this is the same question here, but because it's good enough with one, so you can't just put a second belt on. Then it's like carrying. But to have clothing in between, so this is addressed the question with the coat. If your one belt is on your pants, and the second belt is on top of your coat. So a lot of people have a belt on their coat and a belt on their pants. But that's two different clothing that are being using the belt for. And both of them have the functionality. Okay. He doesn't address the question of the suspenders together with the belt, but I've seen plenty of people walk around like that. Yes, Aaron.
What about the belt that Hasidic men wear when they're praying? How do they get that to the shul?
That's a gartel. That's usually because that's usually over. That's a good question. If you're wearing, the question would be, but it has a purpose for davening. The question would be, let's say for me, I wear it over my kehilchatah, so then it's like a belt over a coat. But some people will have a gartel just on their waist while they have a belt. But maybe this would fall under. It's not there for protection. I mean, it's not like you're just being OCD with two belts. It has a separate purpose, which is davening belt. It's the idea of wrapping yourself to prepare for davening. There's a pasuk to support that. So that would be mishrabbi different, because I definitely see people walk out with gartels, even if they don't have a jacket underneath. Okay, 26. Pri Megadim Mishnah Brura. Okay, just quoting sources. It says, you are forbidden for, since one belt is sufficient, the second belt is considered a burden. 27. This is rabbinical prohibition. He quotes Sefer Hatruma, and the Mishnah Brura. 28. He quotes Tosfos. Let's do one or two more. Mitpachas shemekanchem by esa'af. Okay, I remember growing up, my father would use the handkerchief, and we grew up in Seattle. There was no handkerchief. There was no eruv. So how do you take a handkerchief out on Shabbos? This would be similar to Barbara, your question at the key, because you want to have it with you, but you can't hold it in your pocket. So noigin, the custom is the karchen tachas beged al yaina al mechnasayim, to use it as a belt. And that, obviously, you have to have a super long handkerchief or very, very thin waist. But either one is that you have they would use it like over the pants. But you have to be careful not to double knot it, because then you have a problem of unknotting on Shabbos. However, God-fearing person, so here he says like this. This addresses maybe the question I said before. He says, some people are accustomed to wrap the handkerchief around, a God-fearing man who usually wears suspenders to hold up his trousers should remove them on Shabbos if you're going to use the handkerchief as your belt, because then you have a belt and a suspenders. Now, I think that's only a situation where the person never wears a belt and a suspenders. And the only reason you're wearing the belt now, i.e., aka the handkerchief, is because you want your handkerchief. So then you should remove, if you're God-fearing, he says, not necessary, but if you're God-fearing, then you should remove your suspenders. So you should have just the functionality of the belt, i.e., the scarf, the handkerchief. However, a person who in the week, and I've seen people like that again, who wear both suspenders and a belt because they have kind of different functionalities. It seems like that'd be allowed. The argument, the others who have a custom, that's what my father did. My father used to wrap it around his neck. And he says that's only permitted if you're using it as a scarf. It's only a person who sometimes wears a scarf, and this will be in place of the scarf. But to have a handkerchief underneath the scarf or separate from the scarf, you're not allowed, because then your neck is carrying it. Again, you have to be careful to tie it in a way that's not knotted, so you don't unknot. But if you just hang it around the neck, let it hang there, and it's not wrapped around, then he says that Isser Gomer, that's totally forbidden. Okay, so here's the question I mentioned before. Can you make, what do they call it? Grungies, I don't know what they call it. Around the wrist, could you put it around your leg? Just tie it around your ankle or your upper leg. I saw a yad around your wrist. Then it's carrying. But that could just be because you never do it. Or even if you do it, maybe that's not allowed in Shabbos, like you can't carry a purse. But either way, that's why, for instance, when we were growing up, to walk out with a towel on Shabbos, some people wear a towel. Let's say you want to go to the mikveh, and you need to carry a towel, and you want to use the towel on the as to carry. You want to take the towel out. And people don't usually walk around with a towel, although sometimes I do when I walk home from the mikveh. So if you're using it as a scarf, similar to the handkerchief, you could use the towel, but you can't just like throw it over your shoulders, because then that's what he says is forbidden. You have to wrap it like you would a scarf. Okay, let's just do the footnotes on this, and we'll conclude the class. Not feeling so great. Footnote number 29. Many poskim, hold on, Barbara. Many poskim do not require this. What are you talking about? This is not permitted unless you wear no other kerchief around your neck. It says most poskim do not require this, for you will get warm from the extra scarf. Oh, so the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says you can only do it if you're not wearing another scarf. But if you're wearing a scarf, you can't put the handkerchief above. He says other people disagree with that because adding warmth is fine, and it's not like wearing two belts. See, Shi'irim, I'm not sure. And Shi'irim, I don't know that I can't pronounce it. Tamatzniim, halacha. Yes, Barbara.
Yeah, and I think I know the answer to this already. But like, I'm a woman, and when I have a Kleenex, I'll put it up the sleeve of my sweater, and and is that considered carrying?
It seems like, because he says clearly around the wrist is not allowed.
Okay. All right. That's what I wanted to be sure of. So.
Yeah. Now, I would say something, but my grandfather always told me, Olav Hashem, Mr. Weiss, he told me that when when they were taken to the camps, he's a Holocaust survivor. His parents, my great grandparents, were sent straight off they were Hungarian Jews, so they went from the ghetto to the camps. As soon as they arrived, Mengele sent them straight to the gas chambers. So at some point, I'm not sure when, because he wasn't sure what it would be. They didn't know what it would be. But at some point, his mother gave him over, and she said to him, she knew that he's going to go through a long time now of difficulties. She said, Beryl, whatever you do, keep your neck warm. And my grandfather took it all the way to the last days. He was very into a scarf. He said, whatever you do, keep your socks dry and your neck warm. So the idea is to add to the neck is not a big deal, according to the other opinions. He says, letting the corners hang down in front of you is absolutely forbidden. Is this the Citrian is prevailing style of wearing it? Not sure what he means by that. Let's see, footnote number 31. Okay, what does he say? Tying around your hand and your leg. Okay, this is okay. This is the question that you had, Barbara. If you have a bad nose cold and being without a handkerchief will be humiliating, will be embarrassing, you may wrap it around your foot, etc., for it is an unusual way of carrying, and a rabbinical prohibition is waived to preserve human dignity. So says the Eliyahu Rabbah and others. See It's Seiris Tshuva. So again, your question about up the sleeve is won't be allowed. I'm not sure why you can't just tie it around your neck, but whatever reason, if you can't tie it around your neck and you want to tie it around your leg, you can. But to just have a napkin, a tissue up your sleeve, I think, I mean, I don't know how common it is for women to have handkerchiefs, but to get a handkerchief, and then it would be different. Yes, Aaron.
How do you wear a handkerchief? Because as we all know, four-corner garments for men need tzitzit.
Yeah, but the first of all, you have to see if the handkerchief has the shear. It usually doesn't have the shear, and it's also not worn on your body. It's worn around your neck or on your around whatever else, your belt or whatever. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
My Tuesday rabbi that I see for class on Tuesdays said this when we were talking about this subject once a long time ago. He said that there was a thing about the men, their fedoras, and the feather, and they allowed it.
I hear you saying the feather in the fedora.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yes, Barbara.
I was just going to ask, what is your Hebrew name? I know your mother's name, so I'll remember you in my prayers for a refuah shemaya.
Thank you. Moshe Menachem Mendel Halevi. Moshe
Menachem
Mendel Halevi. Let's just do one more. Let's just do one more. This is a good question. I dealt with it when I was in Montreal for Shabbos. So we were in Montreal for Shabbos, and we had to go out of the Erev. So the question was, can we wear gloves? So he says, Bat Yadayim, which are gloves. Ksayos, Kefaviyos, Hansheva, different names he gives for gloves. Yesh Matim Latzam Shabbos Veish Aishrim. There's different opinions. Some say it's permitted, some say it's forbidden. Asi Lachamim Shtei Yadayim Biyachad Yadonius Muff Yesh Lahakol Tafi. So for a muff, what's the problem? The problem with gloves is that you can take them off. We always take off our gloves. I remember growing up that the women, it was more permissible because it's more of a garment for them, whereas men, it was just it would be scared to take it off. The reason we were there then, it was Friday night, and we were by my brother's Shabbos, the Shabbos celebrating after the marriage, and we had to walk home, and it was freezing. I'm talking about, it was Montreal in the winter, and literally, I remember my wife and I, we left a bottle of water in the car, and Saturday night when we picked up the car, it was like not just frozen, it was deep frozen. It was like really cold. So they said that the Rav allowed to wear gloves, although we're more strict not to wear gloves. But because the concern is you'll take them off, there's zero concern in the weather that we were in Montreal that we would take off our gloves. It's literally very cold. So in those extreme weather environments, it's more lenient. Now let's see what he says over here. Okay, let's bring down the opinions on gloves. Both opinions are quoted in Shulchan Aruch 30137, who is inclined to be machmer. The Alter Rebbe is more machmer, which is not to wear gloves. The reason is that you may have reason to remove them and will carry them in public domain, says the Beis Yosef. The custom is to be makel because some say that our streets are not public domain because, like we said before, it's a carmelis. But only a carmelis, the Mission Brewer says, but in a real public domain, let's say in Brooklyn, etc., a pious man should be machmer on himself, so says the Mishnah Brewer. So men are usually more careful not to wear it, even in a carmelis. But again, in a scenario where it's freezing now, the reason why the muff is more lenient, because even if you take one hand out of the muff, the second hand is in there. So I think that's why the muff, seemingly, even though the muff is less of a garment, but it's like a sweater on your hands. The Taz, because even if you take one, exactly what he says, even if you take one hand, the other one remains in it. But the Eliyahu Rabbah disagrees that the muff is not more lenient than the gloves. But the Taz, which is again one of the authorities in the Shulchan Aruch, says it is more lenient. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's stop here. Thank you for joining. And we have our second halacha class on Saturday night in the laws of tefillah. It's a short class of just 30 minutes with the story of the Baal Shem Tov and for Fush Leim and for Janice. So hope for those who can join. Laila Tov, take care.